You ever just pick up a game, read the exciting previews of it, load it up and then find yourself not enjoying the game? Well, sucks, but that happens sometimes. Not all games are able to draw us into their worlds for one reason or another. My most recent example was Sonic Superstars. The first few levels had me hooked, but that drop in quality later on, with the level layout and look of some levels, really left a sour taste and made me unable to experience the world, but it got me thinking about immersion in video games. The different elements that hook us from music to story to interactivity. There are also a lot of other elements that create immersion, and I can't talk about all of them, which is where an immersive sim expert, Deadforge, will be helping me talk about immersion in gaming.
Well, thank you, Storm, for the kind words. I don't know if I'm quite qualified to be called an immersive sim expert, but I do really like the design philosophy, and I'm more than happy that you invited me today to join you and talk about immersion in games and all the fascinating worlds, all their sounds, and beauty that comes with it. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Now, let's start with one of my favorite elements to talk about in games, the sounds. The way games sound are essential to immersing players, not just the ambient music that you hear when exploring the world, but everything that can be heard. The music that matches the mood you're supposed to feel, the sound effects of objects and players interacting with the world, to the voice acting performances of the characters. All these elements together create a listening experience like no other. Take the Marvel Spider-Man games, especially when you're swinging around New York, highlights how incredible the game sounds on all these fronts. From shooting the webs to the sound of momentum you get when letting go, these appropriate sounds really add to that feeling. Of course, we might not be able to experience how it feels to swing across New York City, as I think most of us aren't equipped with the necessary, tools needed to do so, but it sounds right enough. Nothing too out of the ordinary, making us, bear with me, feel like Spider-Man. But it doesn't just end there. We have the music, the sweeping score, making it feel both daunting, heroic, being able to swing and glide across New York City. And a very nice touch too is the voice acting. Spider-Man actually has two different voice tracks, one for when he is not doing anything at all, and another for when he uses more force to swing around. This small detail, although might be completely unnoticeable on the first playthrough, adds that little extra element, further immersing us into the world. Although I didn't talk much about the music, let's take a deep dive into one of the most immersive soundtracks of all time, Super Metroid. Super Metroid was ahead of its time, and still today is one of the best titles to use the soundtrack to kinda control how the player is meant to feel. You know what, let's even throw Metroid Prime into this category as well, because both soundtracks managed to do the same thing, which is to create specific emotions based around the soundtrack. Both soundtracks excel at striking a mood. Just listen to the introduction of Super Metroid, the ominous synth contrasted with the high-pitched pad, which gives off the mood that something terrible has happened. It's super intimidating, until the more triumphant part of the song comes by, making it clear that yes, you will be going up against a very harsh world, but that this will be the journey of a heroine. Or take the Phendrana drifts of Talon 4 on Metroid Prime. The only word I can use to describe it is magical. It makes the ice part of the world feel like a winter wonderland of sorts, but also managing to make it feel mysterious all the same. Truly remarkable stuff. Moving on, the original Resident Evil 4 and remake highlight another area where games use sounds to immerse the players through sound design, more on the vocal side. Sound design of Resident Evil games have always been top notch, with the sounds of the footsteps to the groans of the enemies, but what I do want to highlight from these two games is the use of Spanish in particular. It might be a common design choice nowadays for enemy characters to speak their native languages, like in Metal Gear Solid 5 for instance, but RE4 did this back in 2005, and I don't know if any game before it did what it did. RE4's Ganados speaks Spanish, which might seem like it's just another language at first, but it creates a very unsettling vibe. By not understanding a language, we can feel alienated from certain situations, and if the stakes are high enough as they are in RE4, not understanding what's going on really makes it clear that you are at odds here, and the remake improved upon it. The Ganados now speak Castilian Spanish and have more phrases that make it clear that they are communicating with one another. If you understand Spanish, or even just a bit of it, it's enough to make you tense up every now and then once the Ganados start swarming you. RE4 has lots of elements that you have to interact with the world around you, but that's not the main example, but it does link to the next area of the video, interacting with the world, specifically in immersive sims.
Storm referred to me as an immersive sim expert, and while I have a good bit of experience with this particular philosophy of game design, I haven't played many of the greats. I have been immersed, engrossed, and truly fascinated by these games ever since playing Dishonored for the first time. I think there's so many things that make immersive sims truly special and unique. They're insanely hard to market and insanely hard to make because they're so systems driven. Immersive sims are by far my favorite style of game, and they have some of the most immersive worlds out there, ironically. But you may ask, what makes them so immersive? Well, it's a very simple yet complicated thing to explain exactly what makes them that way. You can say it borrows many designs from other genres, but it all comes from RPGs more than anything. So the RPG elements with choice and consequence mixed with the ability to have an almost endless way to traverse areas or go about certain quests. The developers think about pretty much every possibility, but still implement systems within their games that allow for such a wide array of choice that often you stumble upon possibilities even the developers did not account for. Prey 2017 is one of the best examples of this entire design philosophy. The fact that you can pick up chairs or a mug and you can throw it at an enemy or even turn into that mug, roll through a hole in a wall to reach a room that you can only reach by finding a key way later in the game is just one of the countless opportunities to use your brain and think outside the box. Thinking outside the box is the key to the immersive sim design. You have to think outside the box. You have to think outside of the constraints of your typical video game to truly understand how to play one. All the living and dead characters on Talos 1 are named and can be tracked down using the security stations. Crazy little details that add insane amounts of world building, like the baseball star who visited the station and he brought gloves for everyone, which is why there's baseball gloves all over the station. Like, who even thinks to explain something like that? Most games and most game developers will not go out of their way to explain why there's an overabundance of baseball gloves everywhere. You just have to make it up yourself and be like, oh, well, I guess everybody on the station loved baseball and they just had a really odd kind of love or passion for it. But no. In immersive sims, they go out of their way to explain even the most minute of things. Aspects like that mixed with a choice and consequence not only in your moral choices, but also in your gameplay, creates this super reactive world full of potential. You can help a group escaping in an escape pod that is jammed, and you have the choice of helping them go on their way to travel to Earth and take the risk of the Typhon leaving the station, or you can kill them. But later on, you can find the floating billboard that you see early in the game when you're coming down the staircase that orbits the station, and you can hack into the computer that's on the back of it and find out that all of the escape pods are fake. So either way, no matter what you make in that one particular choice, you already killed them. The thing is though, you can have an entire playthrough and never find out that one little detail. Is it something that changes everything? No. Is it something that changes how you feel about that world and how real that world feels? Yes. And it makes your choice have even more weight, even if both options end in death. It's still all about that moral choice that you make, but then you make it without even knowing all the variables. Immersive sims usually tell a lot of very touching and beautiful tales within the main narrative and outside of the main narrative through audio logs and other means. And you find audio logs in this game, as you do in many others like it in Bioshock, Deus Ex, etc. But in this game, it's not forced, nor is it lazy. You get these genuine tales of people prior to the events of the fall of Talos 1. You get glimpses into the lives of the people and the station itself and what it feels like to live within this station that is now abandoned, for the most part, that you were traversing as this giant space dungeon. Once again, another way to fully show the depth and intricacies of not only the immersive sim design, but the world in which you are inhabiting during the course of your time with the game as well. These are many examples of what makes immersive sims amazing and insanely immersive.
The final element that helps immerse players into the world of games are the narratives and worlds that hit us in the feels, which go hand in hand. If the game's story has either such a thrilling narrative or believable characters, it gives the players a chance to feel like they are part of something great. One of the most recent examples I can think of is Alan Wake 2. No spoilers, as you should experience it yourself, but man, this game. From the characters you get to play as and meet along the way, who grow on you with their deep personalities, with motives of which you can understand what they're doing, what they do, and although sometimes they might do things you might not necessarily agree with, you feel yourself rooting for them. It's just so complex with so many layers, which is thanks to the narrative being divided into two different parts. By letting the player experience the stories they wish to progress in a given order, it can lead to combinations of events, making you connect even more with some characters as you get to experience their side of the story first, and adds questions that you might have later when you get to the other side of the story, Truly a remarkable achievement in storytelling. But more on the character side and their own stories, we have the stories of the many lives in Cyberpunk 2077. The stories in Cyberpunk are incredibly dark. No story in this game has a true good ending. No one ends up living happily ever after, they just keep living. Cyberpunk manages to write stories that simply just show people living, the most human aspect of life, which includes so many struggles that people go through on a daily basis in this dystopian world. From grieving for the loss of a loved one, working together like a family, dealing with the existential crisis of AI conscious and the human mind, to giving back to a community, and so much more. These are only some of the side quests you'll find in Cyberpunk, but the main story too, Phantom Liberty especially. The choices you have to make in this expansion are so tough to make because of how much you end up understanding the characters of Songbird and Solomon Reed, which is no thanks to the harsh world of Cyberpunk, how it put them in these situations. And this world, Night City, is another element that helps immerse us players into the game.
As Storm previously stated, Cyberpunk's world is a dark and foreboding place. The quests and characters within it show that in spades. But without Night City, you have no Cyberpunk. Night City is a very realistic feeling location that has hope and desperation in equal measure sprinkled throughout. It wouldn't feel right if it was overly oppressed or overly happy, like the two-faced and equally deep world of We Happy Few. Night City shares the same qualities with many game worlds that have these touching or immersive feeling locations that only further enhance the touching narratives Storm discussed. I mentioned We Happy Few, which takes place within the seemingly utopian Wellington Wells. But underneath the happy, pill-riddled populace lies a dystopian nightmare fueled by violence, fear, coercion, and starvation. Wellington Wells feels lived in, and it really shows a world gone to hell. But nobody wants to be aware, so they just pop pills and forget all their troubles, so they can look through rose-tinted glasses at the world and their inevitable demise. The touching or heartstring-pulling elements are that of those you meet along the way, and the stories you learn directly or indirectly. Games like The Witcher and Red Dead Redemption 2 have immensely detailed and beautiful worlds that are ripe for exploration and discovery, yet similar to Cyberpunk 2077, they never try to hide the human elements or the downsides of the situation. You see struggle and you see success. You learn and grow, both as a player and as a character within these worlds, and have some effect on the world around you, both big and small. The details and the realism make them immersive. Sure, they do. But what really, truly makes them immersive, and what immerses you into that world, and makes it to where you do not want to leave, is how they make you feel, and how the topics they tackle are ones you could face every day in your life. Maybe not hunting down trolls and vampires, but the moral choices Geralt or Arthur have to face, and occasionally choices they have to make, and how that affects not only the world, but how it affects themselves and all those around them. That is truly what touches your soul and immerses you fully into these worlds. Concrete Genie and The Pathless are great examples, but for entirely different reasons, which goes to show the depth of the video game medium as an art form. These two games tell stories that are much more lighthearted and less realistic. They're more like storybooks, but stories that teach you a life lesson. I believe Red Dead Redemption also has that quality. Red Dead 2 teaches you that you can always change and do what's right. Concrete Genie shows that violence isn't the only answer to being bullied, because usually the bullies are the most broken people you will ever meet. The Pathless teaches us to go our own way and never follow the pack. You have to go on your own journey and forge your own path in a pathless life, because nobody has a destiny nor a predetermined destination. And I think all these games and all these examples are what makes games so beautiful and makes their world so touching that they just reach into your soul and just really just grab on and just doesn't want to let go, and you don't want to leave them. Why? Well, because they're just so amazing. They're so immersive, beautiful, lived in, and full of a little bit of real. So it's not a complete disconnect, which I think makes you connect with it even more, because there's real elements in there. And maybe the next time that you're playing a game, just take a moment to see why it is that you feel immersed, why it is that you are so connected to this game, to this world, and to these people and all these locations. Take a second to appreciate the art. Take a second to appreciate everything. Back to you, Storm.
Immersion is a key tool for all games. All games require some sort of immersion to hook the players, from the varying uses of sounds to the level design and interactivity of immersive sims, to finally, where the stories and worlds of games can play at our heartstrings, making it all feel real and grounded. There are tons of other ways games immerse players into their worlds, but these points were just a glimpse of how it's done. With that said, I think all this together shows how video games are the best form of art, because unlike books or movies, we are an active element in playing the game, and that's how we get immersed. And with that, welcome to the end of the video. Before I go on with the usual outro, thank you so much for Deadforge for coming along and being a part of this video. If you want to watch quality video essays that are really well structured or podcasts about interesting topics, he's the guy to watch, and I really recommend you give him a subscribe. But now, thank you for watching all the way through to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, a like and a dislike both mean a lot if you enjoyed the video or not. Let me know in the comments, what are your favorite games that managed to immerse you into their worlds, and how did they pull it off? I'd really like to know, and if you want to see more from me, subscribe comes a long way in helping the channel out. With that said, I've got some exams coming up and some more videos to make before the end of the year, so I think I'll get working on those two things. Thanks again for watching all the way to the end, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, night, and week, and with that, Storm out.